person that you're speaking about. What's his name?
William Hall. William Hall. He
William
does a
Hall.
show called
William
Tanakh
Hall.
Talk. Yeah, wonderful gentleman. But it's 11 o'clock, Rabbi, and so
Let's go.
I've started to stream this, so yeah.
Put the music first, and then when you will start, I will start speaking.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our live book study with Rabbi Chaim Goldberg live in Jerusalem. This is going out to all Noahides, and we're studying the book, the Kuzari, and we're so excited with last week's broadcast that, Rabbi Chaim sent me some wonderful material, and I think we got some great stuff to show today, so please feel free to weigh in on the comment section and ask the Rabbi any questions. We've got some wonderful things for you. Rabbi, how are you this week, and where do you want to start off for this broadcast?
First of all, good evening from Jerusalem. Welcome to the world, and welcome to everybody who is listening to us, attending those classes and those learning. I think it's very powerful things that we are learning now, even though this book was written down 800 years ago. It is very relevant
Profound.
To us, and we'll see it also today. So welcome to everybody, and blessing from Jerusalem. I'm fine, thank you. How are you today? How are you tonight?
I'm good, and blessings to you. Like I keep saying, we are so honored in the West that you are even taking the time to share with us out of such profound literature, and more so explain it as your tradition teaches, and we're honored, and I'm excited, and I think this is going to be a decent broadcast. So, last week we went through the introduction of the Kuzari. We explained, the origin of the land where it went on 400 years before Rabbi HaLevi had wrote about it, but I find his work is so profound in his poetic style. I likened him to William Shakespeare, but from hundreds of years earlier, and I'm still blown away by some of the even scientific style comments. But I think you're going to get into the meat and potatoes of how Hashem can and does reach human beings. Please take lead, Rabbi. We're your students.
Okay, so let's continue on. After we spoke last week about the connection between the actions and our thoughts, and how we need to connect those two to be one unit, and it's a dream for all of the universe. Everybody in this world is wishing, is willing that his actions and his thoughts will be combined together. We will try to go on one step deeper, one step more profound, to learn a bit, to start learning in much deeper way the words of God, and how we, the Hebrew nation, are looking about this connection. So first of all, before we will jump inside to the text itself, I want to say a few words, because we're going to jump a bit. We're not going to read all the paragraphs of this book. We don't have the time in only eight sessions. So I want to skip this time, but I want to do it briefly. After this king had a dream, I want to remind all of us, that Rabbi Judah HaLevi he wrote this book on this situation of this story.
Right.
But all of his words is his imagination. It's not his imagination. It's his learning how to present the Hebrew nation, or how to present the Judaism the Jewish faith, to introduce it to the world. And Rabbi Judah HaLevi, after this king had the dream, he's putting in few words the philosopher, and then he's bringing also a Christian person, and then a Muslim person, and then he's jumping to the Hebrew nation. So I will conclude in a few words the issue of the philosopher, and then if you will have questions, don't hesitate to ask me. I will also say a few words to conclude the issue of the Christian person and the Muslim person, and then we'll dive inside to the Hebrew answers of the rabbi, because it's mind-blowing. It's something really different. If it's okay with you, we can start.
Do you want me to read some of the text at all? Would that get things
at this
going?
Point of time, no. At this point of time, nothing. Let me start with the philosopher. Okay, the king decided to bring a philosopher inside. Now, I will say it very briefly. The philosopher is something that started in the timing of the history. It wasn't here before 2,000 years ago, 2,600 years ago. I think Thales was the first one, the first philosopher that started.
Right.
And this is when it started, only then. Today, young students in grade 6 or 7, we are already teaching them all the science that Thales spoke about.
Right.
But in those days, it was, very big issue.
So,
but
can I interject, Rabbi? Can I interject?
Yes.
I just want to point out, okay, so you're saying the philosophers began around 600 BC. And from my understanding, the term philosopher comes from two Greek words, philo and sophos, which meant lovers of knowledge, philo, sophos. And I understand that this totally differs from the way the rabbis view as being a lovers of knowledge themselves. And there was quite I understand that for a few hundred years, there was quite a clash between the Greek culture and the way they viewed the world, especially with that scientific style viewing. I mean, the way they began to break down understanding versus the way the Hebrew people understand all of existence. Is that what you're going to elaborate on? The difference between the way the Hebrew people understand the world and the things around us versus, say, the scientific method or processes?
Yes, you're saying it's you were very exact with the words that you said, and it was amazing how you managed to summarize all of this in a few sentences, and it's very true. Philosopher is someone who is loving the knowledge. He loves the knowledge, but this is it's great, because today almost all of the science that we have is because those philosophers started this, seeking of this knowledge. They looked for the knowledge, they looked for the world, they tried to understand the world, to define the world, and it's true. But when they are trying to speak with the issues regarding God, it's something very closed. It's a closed world, because they're speaking with themselves and they're answering with themselves. No one from outside the world is speaking with them. And this is one of the most, important difference between the prophecy world and the philosopher world. Because the philosopher world, it's an amazing world. It's something that, with a lot of knowledge and a lot of smart world, but still, it's a closed world where people are asking questions and also answering to themselves, but nothing from outside the world is speaking with them. In the other side, and this is exactly how the king is rejecting the philosopher, because he's saying to him, listen, the things that you're saying to me are great, but it's contradicting the dream that I have,
right, that
someone from outside of me came and spoke with me. And this is what you're showing in the screen, that there are, scientific issues from one side, and there are non-scientific issues from the other side.
Right.
And we don't, we need to know that there are two different roots of things that we are getting and we are understanding in this world. Because all of this issue of, we'll say, it's a bit hard to see this.
The sandwich model, I see the way that people categorize information. One side you have a scientific, the other side you have a non-scientific. On the scientific side, it's one of those options. It's for categorizing scientific information. It's the percentage of facts. Now, I found that profound in this diagram, that you guys describe the scientific information as the percentage of facts relatively to the percentage of interpretation. That is a very profound statement. The percentage of facts relative to the percentage of interpretation. And for example, you got physics and you got analytic versus analytic psychology. You can see these two. Now, I've studied a bit, and there's one professor in UCLA who's done some great categorizing, what he calls the difference between the epistemic and the ontologic. Okay, the ontology, the field of ontology deals more with the nature of things. What is the nature of things? And epistemic deals more with the dry, hard, cold, measurable weight or facts. One thing I've heard you share in the past that I found most profound was the way you described the difference between quantity and quality.
Right.
And
Exactly.
it, so I think we're seeing some of this here between the scientific and the non-scientific, something that has to do with a quantity in the scientific realm versus non-scientific, it's quality and then some. Is that where we're going with this?
Yes, exactly. This is, you said very right. You reminded also one of the courses that I'm giving, again, through my site. You can get it for free. But this is mainly the most, we'll say, the biggest debate between the Hebrew nation and the philosopher nation. Okay, they are dealing with the, not with the quantity, but more with the, not with the quality, but more with the quantity of the issues. And we are trying to speak about the quantity. The truth is that we are supposed to combine those two realms together.
So you can't neglect one. You can't neglect the quality and just go after quantity.
Also,
I have some cousins and some friends, family members that are very, very scientific minded, and they want to see tangible evidence. They want to see tangible this. They want to see the quantity, and they almost neglect that quality. And I've heard even beyond just quality. I mean, it's a difference between maybe a system and an event. An event is something that, or a process in an event, a process in an event. Like when you have a child, yes, there is a process of birth, a process of conception and then birth. But any parent, any true loving parent knows that when they've had a child, when a child is born, it's an event. And there's a quality there that no honest person can deny, and I believe you folks are tapped into something that the rest of the world really needs to grab.
Yes, it's true. But again, now, please, I'm asking because I'm also looking at the time, and it's important for me to continue on.
Okay.
Mainly, we said instead of going inside to the text and learning the text for all the details, basically, this is what Rabbi Judah HaLevi is trying in this book to show, to expose, that the philosopher can't really give an answer to the main quantity issues that that people have in the world. I would say the inspiration side, the spiritual side. The philosopher is getting stuck in one stage,
right.
And this is why he brought the philosopher as a beginning. And the king regretted it. He said to him, with all of the respect, my dream is contradicted to your, I will say, philosopher of life.
Okay.
And therefore, I need to reject you. And from there on, he's jumping to the Christian world, and after that to the Muslim world.
Right.
With those two big, I will say, cultures or big religions, I will say only two small points. Okay, those two were in a very big, I will say, fight or big question. What religion is more important?
Right.
And we know how much they fighted one against each other until today. If you're asking me, the 9/11 that we had a few years ago, 20 years ago, almost
Right.
20 years ago,
Right.
was
2001.
the beginning. Yes, it was the beginning of a very big fight between the Christian world and the Muslim world, and it started a lot of issues that we see today also with the ISIS and the other things. Those two religions are based on the assumption that there is something that we can call prophet from outside the world. Someone spoke with men.
Right.
And if we will take, for example, I know how to say it in Hebrew, the Aztecan. The Aztecan is a culture from few thousand years ago,
Right.
who didn't knew the wheel. Okay, like we know today the wheel, they didn't know the wheel. And you will try to speak with them about this issue of the wheel. They don't have any
Concept.
knowledge.
No frame of reference.
Right. And on the same logic, I will say, issue, the Muslims and also the
Christians, yes.
Christians, both of them are speaking after the Hebrew nation came and spoke about the issue of prophecy, that someone outside from the world, someone who created this world, spoke with people inside this world.
Right.
After the Hebrew nation said this issue, then the Christian and the Muslim came to the world. Therefore, Rabbi Judah HaLevi is speaking with those two, or is bringing those two, and what the king is suddenly understanding that if he wants to know the source of this logic idea that someone from outside the world spoke with people inside this world,
right,
he needs to speak with the source. The source is the Hebrew nation, and then he's basically going to the Hebrew nation. This is the structure of this book and the logic of what's happening here. If you have any questions, you can ask. If not, we can continue on.
We have a few people that have logged. We have a few people that have logged in, but nobody's asked any questions yet. So, folks, feel free to ask some questions. Summarize briefly at this moment. The king of the Kuzari had a dream, and he brought philosophers in to try to give him some bearings, and he rejected the philosophers, the scientific method, solely because it does not tap into something outside. Then he turned and asked the Christians and the Muslims, which both adhere to a prophet of sorts, both adhere to the origin with somebody who supposedly heard something from outside the source. And the whole religion for the Christians is they ascribe that everything Jesus heard from an outside source, and the Muslims adhere that Muhammad heard from an outside source. But basically, the Hebrew nation is trying to define and clarify up front, beforehand, long beforehand, as they did 600 years before with the philosophers, that there is something more, and how people can actually hear, because we know that the Hebrew nation had thousands of prophets before Islam ever began and before Christianity ever began, so they know how that works. Now I'm looking at the second diagram, the way of receiving and processing information by human beings. Rabbi, it might be about a 30-second lag on the broadcast itself, but you've got there, where does the human consciousness receive information from? And the source of that information, it's either an internal source or it's an external source. And in that external source, is it from consciousness states, awakening, hibernate, sleep, sleepwalking, are things possible, information from resources outside the senses? So you folks are trying to stay clear and logical, not let spirituality taint holiness, right? Because let's face it, there's been a lot of spirituality in a lot of different religions that really have nothing to do with holiness, right? And I think that the preservation by the Hebrew nation has to do with holiness. What has Almighty God, what has Hashem asked of us?
Yes, exactly. Exactly, and you said it in the right way. And I must also note another thing about this slide that you're showing here, about the source of the information, that from time to time also, when we have some sort of internal source, it is when you connected very deeply to yourself with the issue of your soul, then the internal source is something very powerful. And this is something that we're not going to go deeply inside at this moment. Okay. I prefer, if it's okay, to move on and to show. I sent you earlier this morning this the statement that we're going to learn from the Kuzari itself. You got it right?
Sure.
I'm asking. So if it's possible to put up the things that we're going to learn from the Kuzari, because now I want to start to read from the Kuzari itself and to explain what's happening there, because it's a mind-blowing. It's something really different than everything that people can think in the normal way. So let's put the Kuzari up.
Okay. Do you want me to start reading a bit?
Yes. I don't see it yet. It's taking time to the...
Should be up.
We still see the slide. Just a moment.
Okay, I'll start reading. It'll come up in a few seconds there.
Okay.
Starting at point 10.
Yes, point 10. Please read point 10.
Point 10 starts off. Al-Kuzari, he says, "Indeed, I see myself compelled to ask the Jews because they are the relic of the children of Israel. For I see that they constitute in themselves the evidence for the divine law on earth." He then invited a Jewish rabbi and asked him about his belief. And the rabbi...
First of all, just a moment. Let's speak about this. Only the interesting issue is that he is not speaking that they are the Hebrew nation. They are only, as he says here, only the people who remained, that stayed. Because in his environment, it's for sure that the Hebrew nation is nothing today in those times.
Right.
But he understands also from the other side that they are the source of this understanding, that there is someone who created this world and there is someone who is speaking with other people. And now we're starting to have fun. So please read number 11.
I like the way he talks. He says they are the relic of the children of Israel. I mean, now this is hundreds and hundreds of years after the dispersion, the diaspora, after after the Bar Kokhba revolts and the Jewish nation was spread abroad. So I can see why he says the relic of the children of Israel. But I love the fact that he says, I see that they constitute in themselves the evidence for the divine law on earth. Now that is a profound and poetic way to describe the Israeli nation. They constitute in themselves the evidence for the divine law on earth. Pretty amazing. Shall I go on with what the rabbi replies?
Yes.
The rabbi replies. The rabbi replies in 11, he says, I believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, who led the children of Israel out of Egypt with signs and miracles, who fed them in the desert and gave them the land after having made them traverse the sea and the Jordan in a miraculous way, who sent Moses with his law, and subsequently thousands of prophets who confirmed his law by promises to the observant and threats to the disobedient. Our belief is comprised in the Torah, a very large domain.
Okay, so first of all, if you're asking me, I think the most important thing was that he was supposed to say, I believe in God who created
heaven and earth.
Created this world,
Yes.
Heaven and earth. Okay, and he's not saying this at all. And therefore, it is very, I will say, mind-blowing what he said there. And This is bringing the king to say the next words. And please read the number 12.
Yeah, it's introductory to the approach in the debate. Yeah, I think it started off with the Christian and the Muslims were both talking about the world, the creation of the world, the creation of the universe. Trying to appeal to this, and the rabbi, who's just humble, sticks to the facts and who he believes in, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and he tells the story about the very large domain of the Torah. Al-Kuzari replies, "I had not intended to ask any Jew, because I am aware of their reduced condition and narrow-minded views, as their misery left them nothing commendable. Now, shouldst thou, O Jew, not have said that thou believest in the Creator of the world, its governor and guide, and in him who created and keeps thee, and such attributes which serve as evidence for every believer, and for the sake of which he pursues justice in order to resemble the Creator in his wisdom and justice."
Okay, so I think that we see here, first of all, a very interesting debate. Very interesting debate. From one side, the El-Kuzar king is asking the logic things. Please give me something that in the academic world,
right,
I will be able to explain this, and I will be able to measure this, and I will be able to understand what's happening, and I will be able to discuss it. And what you're speaking with me is all sorts of stories. Believe it's only because you're a bit confused. So please, if you don't mind, I would like to go inside again to chapter 11, to this phrase 11, and to see this again, and to learn it again, because Rabbi Judah HaLevi is teaching here something amazing in his way of teaching us what is God and the way that we are working with him. So first of all,
yep, go on.
So first of all, the first thing I want to say is that we are not. It's very easy to speak about God who is sitting up there and all sorts of, I will say, philosophical God.
Right.
Okay. But it is
somewhere
much more someone very far from us and everything else. It is very easier and I will say it's much more powerful to speak about something that is related to me. Not something very far, something I don't know where. Something that is related to me. When God is speaking with Moses, his first words to Moses in the desert, when he's in Jethro,
right.
He's worshipping his
in the land of Midian.
Yes, in the land of Midian. He's saying to him those words also. He's saying to him, I am the God of your father,
right,
and the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This is what he says in the beginning of Exodus, and it's the same issue. When you're asking yourself, each person in the Hebrew nation, how exactly am I connected to the Hebrew nation? I'm connected to the Hebrew nation through my fathers, my father, my grandfather, my mother, and my grandmother
lineage,
and grandfather from there. And it's connected. And also, all of us also are connected to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So we're starting with something that we can feel, we can understand, we can relate.
Right.
And then we can also speak about all the stories that we had, and all those things that happened to us, to our forefathers, and therefore we can understand them and we can relate to them. The only I can. It reminded me also another interesting thing. I already said it a few times, also in the courses and also not in the courses. There is a very nice midrash. Midrash is something that the sages are saying. It's not written down in the Torah, but we have in heritage. This is what happened.
Sure.
That says that Abraham, our forefather Abraham, that he was bringing all the time visitors to his tent, to his place.
Right.
He was giving them food.
Welcoming,
and
yes.
Welcoming them with food and everything else. And when they wanted to pay to him, he said to them, listen, don't pay me anything.
Right.
Just bless the Almighty God. And if they rejected this issue, they said to him, we don't know him, we don't see him, anything else. He asked them a very, very high price for this food that he gave them. So they said to him, why such a big price? He said to him, all that you're going to pray to him or give me this price. So they preferred to pray to God. Right. Now you're asking yourself, it's a very interesting story, but it seems like a kid's story before they're going to sleep.
Right.
Do you really know someone that is giving food, and because of that, people starting to believe in God? But the issue is the same logic. The food is teaching us that you cannot survive here in this world without getting something from outside of you.
Exactly.
To survive here, you need something from outside of you to live.
To live.
And this is something that you are feeling all over yourself for 3 times a day. You can't stay without food for too much long.
No.
Or without water. And all of this is giving you the feeling all the time that you must rely on something outside of you.
Yes.
Because at the same time, God also could have done that all of us needed to stand upside down on our head for 3 times a day. And he didn't do that. The only thing that he did, that we will eat something.
Right.
Because he wanted to teach us that we need to rely on something from outside of us.
From outside.
And also that and this is the issue of Abraham, that he is teaching people the issue of to believe in God through the environment of what we feel, and not only all sorts of logic issues that are not related to our life.
Right, 100%. Yeah, it's a profound reality that too many people take for granted. They take for granted, and when they get into a deep class, they want to make it all logical and all philosophical and all scientific. I'm prone to that more often than many. Because we live in a world today that expects that. I'm convinced, in my years of study, I'm convinced that the Torah delivers that and more. And the more begins with understanding that the sheer reality that we hunger for food or thirst for water means that we as human beings need to focus on something outside of ourselves for life, rather than just always looking inside, that we're created this way. So please, yes, go on, sir.
So and again, it's an amazing thought. How and another thing that I want to teach here, or to say, to point here, it's something like more or less something like 20 years ago, that one of the sages, not of Israel, so one of in the universities, I think it was Peter, I don't remember his name, he said something very interesting. He said that the main issue of the human being is by telling stories.
Right.
We are connecting things one to each other, and this is how we're giving meaning to what we are doing.
Right.
We are doing things, and each person is giving different meaning to what he is doing. For example, if you will ask me to pass you, we're sitting together, we're eating together,
right,
and you're asking me to pass you the salt.
Okay.
It could be with a few meanings. It could be only because you want to put some salt in your food, but it also could be that we didn't spoke one to each other for the last 20 years, and suddenly you're trying to start to speak with me. So there are all sorts of meanings inside. I will take it to another example. We can sit down in a restaurant that it's a vegetarian restaurant. Okay, people don't eat there any meat in this restaurant, and some of the people will go inside because they are doing some sort of a diet. Other people will go inside.
Sure.
Yeah. Yes,
we
and
have
other
a lot
people
of
will go
those
inside.
here. We have a lot of vegetarians where I am, and they just opened a new vegetarian cafe down around the corner. It's a tea house and vegetarian cafe. Kind of unique. I haven't gone in yet, but I'm tempted. But I'm like, I could use a diet myself.
And other people will go inside, not because they want to do a diet, but because they don't like that people are killing animals for eating them. So the meaning of the issue, the story that we are telling ourselves is different, and this is how we are building our meaning in our life.
Exactly.
We are telling stories, and we are building the meaning in our life. And this is exactly what's happening in paragraph 11. We are building a story of how exactly we are related to God. And we are related to God through the history of our nation. If I will say it like that, the history of our nation starting with our forefathers, and it's continuing with Egypt and going out from Egypt with all of those things that happened there. And then when we are going in the desert for 40 years and coming back to Israel, or going back to the home, the Israel land, and also getting the Torah.
Right.
This is a story that is giving us a meaning with connection with God. So this is another interesting way that Rabbi Judah HaLevi is trying to show us the issue of belief in God. It's not something abstract, it's something that is related to my life. I will note also that usually when people are speaking one with each other, they are jumping to all sorts of issues. It's not an academic discussion that is going, step one after each other, building up, brick after brick. So, and this is what Rabbi Judah HaLevi is saying. The Hebrew nation belief is something alive, that is a story that you can live inside it.
Yes, amazing. And, this is, I think, the reality of how every parent teaches their child. I mean, there's got to be a degree of one-on-one, the stories that they share with. If they try to pass on heritage, they try to pass on history. But, I mean, people from time to time do let internalized ideas in their minds run away with them. We need to have a compass or a barrier or a bearing, a compass with a heading so we know where we're going. And, I find that there's some great stuff in this material that actually begin to align that compass. So should I continue with 13?
Before, I want to say another few words about the 11, another few things that you need to understand. If you will look carefully, you will see that almost everything there is how it happened in the history, okay? It starts with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and then the children of Israel who went to Egypt.
Yes.
After that, there were miracles in Egypt. After that, they went to the desert, okay? They came to the Hebrew land, and only after that, we're speaking about Moses. But if I will ask you, in the history side, Moses came much before that. So why exactly Rabbi Judah HaLevi is changing the schedule here? Why is he changing the history time? You see that the Moses here in paragraph 11 is only at the end.
Yeah, he gave them the land after having made them traverse the sea and the Jordan, which was done by Moses in a miraculous way. But then he states after that who sent Moses, rather than say he sent Moses before and then. Okay, I see your point. Moses with his law.
Okay, so we need to understand, and this is something very, very important, and it's a very big difference between the Hebrew nation and the Christian, I will say, religion.
Okay.
And those are two different things. I'm all the time saying to you that we are speaking about the Hebrew nation. We're not speaking about the Hebrew religion.
Okay.
We have also a way of worshiping God. We have a religion how we are worshiping God, but we are a nation. And this is exactly what Rabbi Judah HaLevi is explaining to us. We are people who are related to a place, to the Israel land. It's true that we also have some sort of religion that is related to that, but we are a nation, and the nation is living in the Hebrew nation, in the Israel nation, and this is why he's putting this issue of the religion only after we are building up this nation that we are.
So that's the boundary line there. The difference. I mean, so many people when they talk about a Jewish person, they're thinking a combination of religion, and in reality, Rabbi HaLevi's sharing that, hey, this is an actual people in a physical area. Then there's that transition who also happen to have a deep religion with Moses and his law, and subsequently thousands of prophets who confirmed his law by promises to the observant and threats to the disobedient. I think that's pretty clear, yeah.
And we need to see that, to understand that this is what he's saying here, Rabbi Judah HaLevi. And from there on, we can continue. So we understand, we see that the king is very upset, I will say, with this issue. And then you can continue on, please, to read the next paragraph, or the next
well, we read 12. Do you want me to read 13?
Yes. Please continue on.
All right. Then the rabbi responds again. He says, that which thou dost express is religion based on speculation and system, the research of thought, but open to many doubts. Now ask the philosophers, and thou wilt find that they do not agree on one action or one principle, since some doctrines can be established by arguments which are only partially satisfactory and still much less capable of being proved. Yeah, and we see that today, a lot of speculative theories. It takes a lot of body of evidence to really form a deep, acceptable position. But yeah, people disagree quite often. Shall I keep reading?
No, just a moment. Let me note here something very important. First of all, we can see that suddenly the Jewish rabbi, is speaking very, very logically here. He's not speaking something, all sorts of unlogical things. Suddenly he knows to speak also on the academical world, I will say it like that. And here we have also, as you noted, there is a very important issue here to say that we know a lot of very big philosophers in our world. But if everything was in the same thought, so all of them was supposed to come to the same conclusion. And we see that they are not coming to the same conclusion.
Right.
So therefore, we need to ask ourselves a lot of questions about this logical, that everybody say that this is the only way, or this is the exact way that everybody will understand. So this is what he's saying. And now you can continue on for number 14.
Yeah, Al-Kuzari responds. He says, that which thou says now, O Jew, seems to be more to the point than the beginning. And I should like to hear more. 15, the rabbi, surely the beginning of my speech was just the proof and so evident that it requires no other argument when he stated where they come from, the family. Al-Kuzari says, how so? And the rabbi says, allow me to make a few preliminary remarks, for I see that you're disagreeing and depreciating my words. Okay, so there's a little antagonism going on in there. Al-Kuzari says, well, let me hear your remarks. And the rabbi says, well, if thou wert told that the king of India was an excellent man, think about this for a second. If you were told the king of India was an excellent man, commanding admiration and deserving his high reputation, one whose actions were reflected in the justice which rules his country and the virtuous ways of his subjects, would this bind you to revere him?
Just let's not forget that in his times,
yes,
of Rabbi Judah HaLevi, India was, very, very far. Something that not like today, you can take an airplane and you can fly to
corner of the world. Another. Yeah, a corner of the world. Something thousands of miles away.
And with all of the mountains at the way, the Himalaya mountains, nobody really went there. And when Marco Polo came back and said that he was in India, everybody said to him, you're bluffing us, you're saying all sorts of things.
Right.
And this is what he is speaking with him, something about today, let's say, for example, about Mars or something like Pluto today.
Right.
Go and speak about somewhere very far, nobody knows. And okay, so let's continue on.
Right. Would the king revere him? And Al-Kuzari says, well, how could this bind me? If you just simply told me, how could this bind me? Well, I am not sure if the justice of the Indian people is natural and not dependent on their king, or due to the king, or both. He says, how am I going to know this? Then he continues, the rabbi says, but if his messenger came to you bringing presents which you know to be only procurable in India and in the royal palace, accompanied by a letter in which it is distinctly stated from whom it comes, and to which are added drugs to cure your diseases, to preserve your health, poisons for your enemies, and other means to fight and kill them without battle, would this make you then beholden to him? Well, Al-Kuzari says, certainly, for this would remove my former doubt that the Indians have a king. I should also acknowledge that a proof of his power and dominion has reached me. Then the rabbi says, well, okay, I'll stop there.
No. Continue on. Another few words, and then I will.
The rabbi says, well, how wouldst thou then, if I asked, described him? How would you describe the king of India? And Al-Kuzari says, well, in terms about which I am quite clear. And to these I could add others which were at first rather doubtful, but are no longer so. So this is the way the logic is.
The logic, exactly. People prefer to speak about all sorts of their, I will say, things that they related to, things that they passed, things that they feel, things that they can measure, they can understand and they can taste, and not to speak about things that are very
lofty,
logically right, but are very, outside the real.
Yeah.
Right. And now he's summarizing, and this is number 25.
Okay. The rabbi responds to me, he says, well, in this way, I answered your first question. In the same strain spoke Moses to the Pharaoh, when he told him, the God of the Hebrews sent me to you, viz., the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. For Abraham was well known to the nations, who also knew that the divine spirit was in contact with the patriarchs, cared for them, and performed miracles for them. He did not say the God of heaven and earth, nor my creator and thine sent me. In the same way, God commenced his speech to the assembled people of Israel. I am the God whom you worship, who has led you out of the land of Egypt. But he did not say, I am the creator of the world and your creator. Now, in the same style, I spoke to thee, a prince of the Khazars, when you did ask me about my creed. I answered thee as was fitting, and is fitting for the whole of Israel, who knew these things first from personal experience, and afterwards through uninterrupted tradition, which is equal to the former. Pretty interesting.
Right. And now he's quoting here the beginning of the Ten Commandments.
Right.
In the beginning of Ten Commandments, when God is speaking with the Hebrew nation, what he's saying to the Hebrew nation, he's not saying, I'm God who created this world.
Right.
He's saying to them, I'm God who took you out from Egypt.
Right.
And only in the fourth command, when he's speaking about that you need to hold the Shabbos, and to do the Shabbos, and not to worship on Shabbos.
Right.
To worship God on Shabbos. So he's saying to them, it's because I created this world for 6 days, and only on Shabbat I took the rest. Therefore, you need to do the Shabbos. But in the beginning, when God is speaking with the Hebrew nation, he's saying to them, listen, I took you out from Egypt. If you're asking me today, if Rabbi Judah HaLevi was sitting down and writing this book today, I'm sure that he would have also adding that God also brought us back to our promised land, to the Hebrew nation, to the Hebrew nation, to the promised land in the last 70 years, and managing us with all of the fights that we had with the Arabs and others, so we can stay here and we can build the country here. And because what we learn here also, that God, the way that is God is, his preference is in the history of the world. Right. It's not something
It's alive.
abstract.
It's alive that way. I see what you're saying. It's living and passed
on
and connected and real and tangible in general without having to speculate. Sure.
Yes, and it's not something outside from there that we're speaking about. That we're speaking about something that abstract. No, no, no. We are living this issue inside with us, with ourselves. And Rabbi Judah HaLevi learned it from God himself when he spoke in the Ten Commandments. This is exactly what he said. He said, I'm God who took you out from Egypt.
Right.
And also Moses, when he spoke with the Egyptians, he didn't say to them, God who created the world, asking you, the Egyptians, to kick out the Israel nation. Right. He's saying to Pharaoh, he's saying to him, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who are the forefathers of this nation, he's asking you to take them out from Egypt. So we see that God, Moses, and now also Rabbi Judah HaLevi is teaching us that the way that we are relating with God is, first of all, with the things that we are managing to feel, to relate to, not something abstract. And this is how we're starting the conversation, I will say, with the issue of faith. Faith is not something that is an abstract thing that you can't prove or you can't understand, or it's very mysterious, or all sorts of those words. Faith is something that you can relate to, and you can understand, you can touch, you can feel it, you can understand how he's saying it in this so
it's
those words.
And it's not just belief, right? Faith has some tangibility to it. I found, especially here in the West, brought up with Christian ethics and things of that nature, they're so stuck on belief, and they completely meld the words faith and belief into one. But in the process, there seems to be a lack of genuine faith and more belief. And I love the way you just stated that faith has tangible roots. There has to be something that's rooted in the ground. It's got to be solid. It's got to be based on something. It's not just an abstract idea, or that's just imagination. And, faith is far more than imagination, and it is far more than just a belief in an imaginary thought. It's something that is directed based on tangible roots. So thank you for sharing that. That's very profound, Rabbi.
Yes, and let's say also put the first brick that we laid down last week, that we are trying to combine not only our belief but also the actions, and now we are starting to move on to the other side, or to the next brick, that we're starting to understand that we have connection with this belief, and therefore it will lead us also to do actions for what we believe in, and we can start living in this world with much more peace and harmony with ourselves and also with others. But first of all, with ourselves, because we are one human being, and we need to be related. To be one, to reunite ourselves also.
Sure.
So those are I will say, if I will summarize what we touched today, is that the issue of believing in God is not something. The Hebrew nation, first of all, is speaking about a God who is from outside the world, who created this world, who spoke with us. And this is a different era between us, and today we also know that the Christian and the Muslims, that they took it from the Hebrew nation, and all sorts of other, I will say, nations that were not connected to the Hebrew nation, who spoke about all sorts of aliens, all sorts of other things that are very far and very not related to us. Now, the Hebrew nation, when we are speaking about those issues, we are speaking about things that we saw in our eyes, we felt, we were part of this history, and therefore we can get related to this issue and manage to go on, to continue on, I will say, to pass it on to generation after generation. And as I said before, today we're also closing the circle by going back to the homeland, to our homeland, from all the diaspora, and rebuilding back the Hebrew nation, the Israel land, and we can continue with this issue. And I think this is a great stop for this, I will say, for tonight. For one moment. I don't think that I brought it to you before, but the next question that will be that the Kuzarian will ask, and this is only an opening for the next week, is if we say so, the Bible is only for the Hebrew nation, because only the Hebrew nation passed this history,
right.
And it's not related to anybody else. And this is something very
profound.
It's not only profound, it's also a bit annoying, because everyone who is not from the Hebrew nation says, I also want to be related to God.
Of
so
course.
Why are you taking everything for yourself? We want also to be part of this.
Yep.
And this is the next question. He's saying to him, how come you're saying this is only for the Hebrew nation? And the rabbi will say to him, yes, it's only for the Hebrew nation. But you know what, let me explain to you a bit more. So what exactly he's speaking and what exactly he's saying, this will be for the next time.
Yeah, we really could use that. I'm looking forward to that next one, because here in the West, we live in such a society that it's all about more. What's in it for me? And when people see something good, they treat life like a buffet, like it's something they can just reach out their hand and take, and even add to. And you know, that is the saddest thing when it comes to the way many people have treated, you know, the word of Torah, the word of Tanakh, the word of God, and they take it for themselves, meld it together with some ideas, and try to serve it up, and that's never been commanded. So hopefully you'll get to clarify how the word of God is applicable to all of us, and what's applicable specifically to the nation of Israel. And I think this is a good point for Noahides, I mean, that have embraced. They see in the text of Torah that there is these seven laws founded, and the way they root and branch into many other ideas and notions that before God, that if we understand, we have an accountability to walk upright in our actions. But we see how, to you folks, the passing on of the laws, in the sense that the depth of them have to do with factually the way one lives. And I think, as we started to discuss beginning at this class today, is that there's a vast difference between spirituality and holiness. And I think that's where you're getting towards, and I see more of that in Rabbi HaLevi's material, and still profound things. And I've read it, and it's still to see you jump out with a few clues here and there, and note, like I had not noticed in my first reading, that, yeah, there was a distinction in that line of Moses, actually, after they went through, and that really had to do with the way they viewed their place in the land of Israel, in their history and their religion. It's not just, one combined thing, but there's distinct elements to a people, and God created you and formed you as a nation for a reason and a purpose, and then there's the religious aspect of it. And we look forward to hearing more from you about the depth of that. Once again, it's always an honor to have you, Rabbi, and please, I'm sorry we didn't get any more questions, but we'll get some, and shall we end it with that?
Yes, I think that this is a good stop for today, and we'll meet again hopefully next week at the same time. And thank you very much for this attendance, and I'm blessing you all from Jerusalem. We are here from Jerusalem, and this is for us. It's and I'm inviting you all to come to Jerusalem.
Yes.
I promised you for the next week. As I promised you, next week I will also show an opportunity of coming to Israel,
right,
for a visit. And I also didn't forget also the issue that I promised you to come to visit you. I hope it will.
One day at a
time. It will become. No. It will. We will manage to do this also hopefully soon. And so, greeting from Jerusalem, and bye everybody. And And thank you very much also for this pleasant time. I'm really satisfied, I'll say it, with the conversation that we have, because you have very profound knowledge also, and you're giving also a lot of insight to this conversation. Thank you very much, Dan.